Welcome to the Legacy Makers Podcast, the ultimate resource for entrepreneurs and business owners looking to make their mark on the world while preserving their legacies. Here's your hosts, Michelangelo Mortellaro and Jason Sampson.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Legacy Makers Podcast. My name is Michelangelo Mortellaro. I'm here with my good friend and associate and business partner, Jason Sampson. Today, we want to focus in a little more on asset protection. We touched on it on our intro on a very high level, but I want to get into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of asset protection, different strategies for different people in different situations. I think a lot of attorneys and asset protection attorneys in particularly will try to give a cookie cutter one solution for everybody because it's easy, and oftentimes it is, it makes for good talking points of like, hey, everybody needs a Cook Islands trust with a Nevis LLC and a bank account in Switzerland, and that's the be all end all, and if you don't have that structure, you're an idiot and you don't have asset protection. And I think the reality is that's not the right structure for everyone, and dare I say, may not be the right structure for most people. So I want to talk a little bit about that and then give a couple of kind of war stories, because I think stories are important, both before I started working with Jason. So my background being traditional estate planning, we're doing wills and trusts and powers of attorneys, and that's great. But when you have someone that has assets that are not the traditional, W-2 employee, I've worked all the time, and I have a 401k, and I have some stocks and bonds and a CD down at the bank in my house. But for people that have rental property, for people that are small business owners, that changes the dynamic. And I'll give an example of, where things didn't go so well prior to expanding the practice to include Jason and our joint efforts at Fortress, and then maybe some examples of what has gone really well. And then Jason, I'll invite you to kick it off to talk about, maybe some stories where before we started working together, where you were just focused on the business law side of things and how maybe the estate planning fell short, and then also some stories about how it works when they really all come together and they work seamlessly.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I appreciate being your associate for the day in addition to being your partner, so thank you for that.
I mean, listen, loosely I call you a friend, and it's very loosely, but nonetheless, I digress. Keep going.
No, so absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to remember that, when we look at these problems and look at these solutions, we're always, trying to come up with the most creative solution possible, the one that we like, the one that the client likes, the one that their, service professional, CPA, banker, financial planner, that everyone's on board. And what I knew before meeting you, before Fortress, was, incredibly frustrating, because you would come to this, essentially brick wall, and people only had, one way of doing things. And us working together for the clients has been, just instrumental in my change, both as a professional in my daily firm here at Venerable, but also through Fortress for our clients. When we would have these interactions with other professionals, and it still exists. Let's be honest. It happened this week where I had a client, I signed off on a legal solution, his CPA signed off on the solution, and the other side CPA wouldn't sign off. And I'm like, in my 23 years of practice, I could not have imagined a deal going south because a CPA didn't want the other side to book a transaction in a certain way. And I'm like, I don't even know that he should care, right? Like, if your client is doing it their way and the other client is doing it their way and both CPAs are signing off and a lawyer is blessing the scenario, why are we blockading this deal? So it's incredibly frustrating to work with folks that are not creative, are not looking for the solution for their client. And just as you said, we oftentimes are faced with that. What's different with us and in our scenario is, a couple of things, right? So we know that we don't know everything. We're constantly, willing to learn a new way and, find a creative solution to something. And just because we've done it, this transaction 50, times, doesn't mean the 51st can't change. And we're also not egocentric enough to think that, 50 ways we did it before was absolutely the best way to ever do it. We're constantly willing to open up our minds to think, is there a different way to solve this problem? Does it make our mind, work a little bit extra? And, I'm sure it's much easier for folks to just kind of go to sleep and put everything on autopilot. But that was literally my experience before we started working together, because, not only the rest of our colleagues in our respective professions, but especially estate planning attorneys. I don't know what it was about, and we're starting to see that kind of change. The seas change a little bit, where the demographic is getting a little bit younger, more. And listen, I'm not bashing folks that have been doing it a while. There's a lot to bring to the practice that way, but there's also something to be said for a younger mindset of what we have now in the younger generation for lawyers. Not just because of their age, but also because they're willing to adapt, learn, and pivot. And that is not something lawyers in general are known for, especially not when you've been doing it for 50 years and you're next to retirement and you're only doing wills and trusts. So, back to your point of what I saw in actuality before we worked together was a lot of just regimented practice. Like, it's only this way, my way or the highway. And it was incredibly frustrating just about at every turn. And quite frankly, the majority of our folks, didn't have any sort of succession plan, continuity plan. What about the next generation? What are you building this business for? Is it for you today? Is it to worry about a paycheck on Friday? Or have you been lucky enough to build something that can create generational wealth? And listen, I understand for a lot of folks, as we ask these questions, we don't necessarily have a master game plan, right? So a lot of folks will kind of look at us with a smile, like, yeah, I was just kind of looking to get paid next week, and we'll figure it all out next month. But there comes to be a certain point in time where you understand, like, you're doing pretty well, right? You've got the recipe down, you're on rinse and repeat mode. So what now? What is it that you are doing, and what is it you're looking forward to in the future? And that's where we come in and have just an absolute pleasure working with clients and looking towards that next step and, protecting what they built, really.
I think you raise a good point. A lot of, and I'll just say attorneys, but I mean, certainly business owners, when you get to a point in your career when the bills are being paid, there's food on the table, you're putting money away for retirement, it's easy to go on that wash, rinse, repeat. This is what I do. The system works. The marketing works. My skill set is good enough to do my little silo of legal work and, let everybody else deal with everything else. But I think the one thing that you and I, Jason, have in common is that there's never, in my mind, a time when you can say literally, like, I've arrived. I know everything there is to know. And, it's a little bit of self-torment, because every single day while I'm learning more stuff after 16 years, I'm learning more things, and I'm a better lawyer than I've ever been. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. And it literally keeps me up at night. And that's the reason I'm always learning, doing podcasts, reading books, because I always feel like in my own mind that, like, I'm not good enough. And you get sucked into your own brain of, like, but all the things I don't know. And you don't realize sometimes you take a step back and go, but you know what? I do know a lot more than a lot of other people in our vertical, because I care enough to want to continue to learn. And I don't take the mindset of, the firm brings in 7 figures and everything's comfortable and I can pay the employees and let's just do what we've always done. There's always that push to learn more. And so before I started working with Jason and we started Fortress, I always just took the position out of ignorance, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't know about structures. I didn't know about, how to have holding companies, and I didn't know the value of even some higher end estate planning things, because they were for clients that weren't really in my wheelhouse. So it was easy to just go, okay, you get a will, you get a trust, everybody gets a power of attorney, and a general power of attorney is good enough for government work. And then as the practice has grown, my knowledge has grown, and my document set has gotten more robust. There's this still, yearning for learning more. So I used to tell my business owners, like, hey, I'm doing the estate plan, but you need to take this to your business law attorney and have him or her integrate, the business side, because I don't know it. It's not my wheelhouse. You're not paying me for it. Good luck. And I think that's where one of the light bulb moments when Jason and I first met on our first lunch date. Don't say that the wrong way. I asked him, I said, how many of your business owners have estate plans? And he was like, 0. And I said, no, like really, what's how many? And he's like, no, like kind of 0. And so I was like, well, oddly enough, like 0 of my clients have a good business plan that's coordinated with their estate plan, because I only know what I know and you only knew what you knew. And it wasn't until we started trading a lot of referrals and it got to the point where we said, you know what, we're handing off business to each other every single day and doing effectively joint consultations. Like, this should probably be its own thing. And that's where Fortress was born on a high level. But now I feel like I'm so much better of a lawyer. As I just said, like, I feel on any given day I don't know anything, but I'm better than I used to be because I know these concepts. And on a high level, I'm not a master at them. I mean, Jason's the master at the business structure and the entities and the contracts and all of that stuff. But I know enough to talk about it, and I know enough to say, these are the issues that we need to resolve, and this is the guy that we're going to bring in on the team that will resolve them for you. And then we work together because there's so much disconnect. I don't know if you want to tell the story about the probate case that we had to deal with the guy that passed away unexpectedly and the wife that didn't know anything, and the rent and all that. If you want to tell that story, I think it's really powerful. And while I always say that business owners, 83% of business owners have no estate plan, this particular case, this gentleman had a business law firm and a very well-known nationwide stretching estate planning law firm. And even though he had 2 attorneys instead of 1 or none, you hear the story, I think it's impactful that coordination is the key. Even if you have 10 attorneys, if they're not on the same page, chances are something's going to fall.
Yeah, so absolutely. That was, we talk about these, beware stories, these black swan events, and, unfortunately, and it gives me shivers as we talk about this story all the time. And, and of course, like life would have it, it couldn't have happened to just a nicer, pleasant, just super awesome lady. And, she loses her husband, has never had anything to do with the business. The guy has been very successful. The business was actually on the market for sale. I believe it was around the $6 to $7 million range, and had these huge commercial industrial spaces, and I think they were at about $30,000-$40,000 a month in rent and 15 employees, and all the stuff that someone that's never had any interaction with the business wants to step into, just as she lost a husband. So it was literally the stories that we talk about, and just amplified to such a real and painful level. So I get called in. She's already met with Michelangelo's firm to go through the probate process, and everyone's trying to pick up the pieces pretty rapid fire. And again, this beautiful sweet lady is just sitting there like licking her wounds, if you will, and has to make payroll on Friday because 15 of these individuals are not going to be able to feed their families if the paychecks aren't getting done. So literally had an estate plan from a huge firm in lovely downtown Tampa. We remain nameless. Charge many multiples of what Michelangelo would charge for that plan. Far worse of a plan, not coordinated with anything, and probably 3 times the price, but we'll put that aside for the time being. I get called in, I'm sitting down, we're just trying to find corporate records. So like, is there a corporate book? Were shares ever issued? Can we look at a tax return? Sometimes, the wife ends up on there for tax planning purposes, and hopefully she's a shareholder. As I'm getting into it, she also mentions, oh, by the way, he had a business attorney on retainer for years. So I immediately get a little bit, standoffish of, okay, well, if this guy's been involved, I don't need to double charge you here. Let's get him on the phone. I actually just had lunch with him last week. Funny enough, we're telling the story, but we've made very good friends, and I couldn't fault this man at all because we've all had clients like this. The client kept him very much at arm's length. It was very transactional. Like, I will come to you for this, and that's it. And you will never see more than this little path that I've laid for you. You'll do this transaction, move on to the next. The lawyer did not form any of his corporations, never held his corporate books, never had the full picture, after asking for it for years. fortunately between you and I, Michelangelo, we've gotten to the point in our careers where, if things are not working out, that we are fearful of, the next shoe to drop or something, we have to have those tough conversations with clients and either allow us to help you, or maybe you need to seek other services too. I'm not faulting that lawyer. I'm not saying he should have done that or, committed any sort of, ethical, breach or anything like that. But we have to overcome that, because I don't know what I don't know, and I can't protect what I can't see. So in this scenario, he had this great, would-be Cadillac of estate plans. Nothing, let's wait for that, let's bold, underline that, nothing was ever coordinated with that estate plan, meaning the trust sat empty. It's an empty bucket with nothing ever transferred into it, let alone the business. I've had business owners for years, and especially after meeting Michelangelo, I'll do a one-page assignment for free. Like, just give me the peace of mind. Let me sleep at night. Let's get that business into the trust. God forbid you're ever hit by the beer truck. No problem. Like, let me do that as, a value add, just a public service to my clients. That wasn't even done. I mean, there was nothing like that. And this poor lady, yes, she gets out of everything and has to sell it for fire sale prices, which was sickening. And we had many, very, very tough moments where, I had to sit with her and essentially almost hold her hand through it. And she sold that business for, fixtures and equipment for under $500,000. So when you go to those situations, we can't make that stuff up. I mean, that's, we would tell stories like these things could happen, but until you see it with your own eyes and have to sit next to the people and pick up the pieces, there is no, equivalent to that. I couldn't, make you feel that on my best day, because it's that scenario that we've seen, that black swan event that we've seen come real. And, we essentially, took that moment, took stock in it and said, not on my watch. Like, this just can't happen. I will, preach to everybody that'll listen to me on either of our client lists every time they have a meeting with me. They might get an earful of stuff that they didn't necessarily want to hear about, but if they open the door, and I don't care, listen, you got someone else you want to do it, like, I'm going to at least tell you about it. I'm going to at least open up your mind to it. Like, you start talking about something that gives me a lead into, more of what you do, Michelangelo, I'm going to, well, did you think about this? What about that? And at least, plant that seed for them, because too many of our colleagues are just trained not to do that. They think that somehow soliciting business or the snake oil salesman and the rest of it, what we know now is it's just bad customer service. And, the average public doesn't know the questions asked. It's like when I go to the doctor. I mean, please, I sit there, I answer the questions, and I walk out and I have, 15 more that I never knew, and, who knows? But we get it, but we have to, make sure that we're putting that information in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, I had a case years ago where a guy, estate planning client, owned a tree service, and probably one of the most workers' comp and suit happy industries. You're cutting big trees above people's houses and cars and whatever else, and the liability that goes along with that. And again, I was just focused on the estate plan. He's like, I want to keep everything out of probate. Okay. So we set some stuff up. He also owned 19 rental properties in his own name. And, that one, thank God, never bit him. But as I look back on that representation, it kind of gives me chills. Not that I did anything unethical or malpractice or anything. Right. I did what he asked me to do. Just keep my stuff out of probate. But now with the knowledge that I have and talking about how rental property can be your most risky asset, and you have 19 tenants that on any given day might love the opportunity to sue their landlord who they think has a bunch of money and take not only the property they're living in, but whatever else isn't nailed down. And then you couple that with a guy who has a business who has huge liability, both from workers' comp and from just general liability. And we didn't take the extra steps with him. And I feel really bad about that, because now I know better. And I would have immediately, if that client came to me today, I would just say, listen, first of all, we're going to get with your liability carrier. We're going to make sure you have an umbrella policy. We're going to make sure that your equipment maybe is sectioned off in a different holding company or an equipment leasing company or doing something so that if something goes wrong in your business, you're not losing all of your trucks and all of your chainsaws and all of your ladders and all of that stuff, which is what drives your business. But I did what he asked me to do, but looking back on it, I could have done a much better job. And now with the knowledge that I have, and you can't force the client to do it. You can just tell them like, hey, these are the big red flags for me. These 19 properties, no, I don't want to just deed them into your trust. I could, and we're avoiding probate, so that's a good thing. But, if you passed away, all of these 19 properties, full retail value at millions of dollars, are running through probate. During the probate process, you're going to be dealing with all the fees, all the costs. Some of your tenants at least are going to take the opportunity to not pay rent because you're dead and you're not going to be able to evict them for quite a while through the probate process. And if they try to sue you, they can take pretty much everything you have except for your house. He was a single member LLC on the lawn business, the tree trimming business, and he owned all these properties outright in his own name. Like, from an asset protection standpoint, that is a huge landmine and red flags all over the place. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And so this is a kind of a feel-good story. Since we've been working together, I called the guy back and I'm like, hey, man, I need to talk with your business law attorney. And he was like, my who? I said, the guy or girl that gives you business law advice. And he's like, yeah, I just set up everything on Sunbiz. My wife's really good at that. And she sets up all of everything. And, and I do my own taxes. And we have the state minimums for insurance. And I said, hang on. Let me open your eyes on this. And the guy was actually receptive because I think he trusts me and he knows I was calling him back. And a lot of what I was calling him back for about insurance and other things, they weren't going to make me any money. Like, I'm not here to like, hey, I found a new way to pinch more money out of you. It's like, I found a way to help you sleep better, even though you're sleeping fine because you don't know what's on the other side of the door. I do. And so let me bring that to your attention. And so we got the proper insurance. We created some land trusts and some other structures for him to give him peace of mind. So I think those are, just two stories of how things sometimes don't go well. And then, I think we're running short on time today, but we have countless stories now of how when we meet a client and we analyze all of their risk, and for some people, maybe an S corp is the right thing. For some, a C corp is the right thing. Maybe it's just a bunch of land trusts and no LLCs or corporations at all. Different strokes, different folks. There is no one size fits all solution. And I really think it's your attorney's job to spend the time with you to figure out what drives your business, what drives your revenue, your income, how do we protect that? And then to take an honest look at your risk profile. There's some businesses that have very low risk. And then there's some like the tree trimming guy or general contractors that have a ton of risk. Everybody's different and there's no one size solution. So I think we'll leave you with that today. And then next week we'll pick up on another topic and we'll dig a little deeper. But stories are powerful, and I think if we can share those with folks, and this isn't a commercial to like, hey, use us. This is a opportunity to be educated on sometimes things that well-meaning attorneys, whether on the estate planning side or the business law side, they may just not have the skill set, and maybe they don't have it yet, but they're yearning to learn more and become more effective. Or maybe, unfortunately, you have the type of attorney that's just mailing it in because they're making enough and they don't really care about things that are outside their wheelhouse. And as long as they feel they're not committing malpractice, like, screw it, not my problem. And I think that's, while it's not illegal or unethical in a technical sense, I think it's a horrible way to look at your business and to look at, your clients. Last thoughts, Jason?
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a great stopping point, and I think as we continue to do this, and I will share with the audience that every time as we're getting into it, we don't know exactly what we're going to talk about, and we have these list of items we want to cover, but I get more energized every time we do it because of the possibilities we have for the education here, and that is really what gets us both going and does cause us to have a little bit more problems sleeping at night when we're thinking about this problem and that problem, and coming up with solutions to problems we didn't know existed before. I can understand how easy it is to find sleep at night when you're just only doing one or two things, but that's certainly never going to be us. And I really look forward to just the whole education process in these conversations. It's been fun so far, and I think we have, just a great road ahead. So
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to Legacy Makers Podcast. We will be with you next week. Also in the description, you'll find links to both of our individual law firms, mortellerolaw.com, venerablelaw.com, as well as Fortress Asset Protection, along with all of our contact information if you need anything. Please follow us if you like this information. Bear with us. We're just getting started, and we probably suck at a lot of this, but we are doing our best. And like anything else, you don't walk up to the plate your first at bat and hit a grand slam, but we start with a bunch of base hits, and then eventually we will get better. So if we haven't completely bored you to tears, feel free to join us next week, and we'll have some more information and more education for you. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Legacy Makers Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review on your preferred podcast platform and visit us at legacymakerspodcast.com. Thanks for listening.